nice things to know. 3.5 beta. This one's called My MIDI Beliefs because basically they're my MIDI beliefs on how you would get the best out of the Force. I've basically used nearly every piece of hardware from the last 50 years. I've owned quite a bit of it, got rid of a lot of it. And in all that time of using MIDI and CV, I've come to the conclusion that setups are so varied and different. It's a skill in itself. Me personally, I care more about making music than twiddling and trying to find the ins and outs of things. So the way I approach this is I try to get everything into this device as soon as possible. That's my rule on it. The more you have inside the Force, the more control over it that you have. There's several different ways of doing that, so I'm going to try and take you through my ways of doing it and maybe show you a bit of other ways of doing it. With that said, let's get going. First thing, what I would say is obviously set up your connections. The best way you could set up your connections is to use a USB. Now, obviously, this has got hardware, 5-pin DIN outs or jack, if you want to use the jacks, jack to jack. And I would say using those would be best when it's just a single device. I think you get the most out of it if you go via USB, because then it's got all the data for what's coming in and what's got sending out at the same time. So no matter how you're using it, if you can get that from MIDI into USB, you're going to have a lot more easier time. So the simple way I've done this is I'm using the MPC keys as a mock bunch of synths. First thing I would do is I would assign them to all separate outputs. After you set out your MIDI outputs to your synths, like I have on here, drum machine, and I'll show that in a second. I've got my Moog, and then I've got the synth sound. After you set up them, I would say this. If you're going to use a keyboard, use a keyboard that you're not using it as a module. In example, let's say you were using JD8000, right? And you wanted to use that. If you weren't going to use the sounds off of that, then use a keyboard. If you're going to use the sounds of that module, use it as sound module, don't use the keys, because then you're going to be sending in and out to the same thing. And that's when you can get into a whole load of shenanigans. So I would say get a MIDI keyboard or any kind of controller or something you definitely know you're not using the sound from, and then just have that, because all you're going to be doing is using it for the keys. Personally, I would say unless you're really good at playing the keys or you're really, really used to playing keys, I would use pads. Because for anybody who's not really skilled, the pads are the best way of you getting something coherent consistently out of the Force. I'd say that if this was the Ableton push as well, I would say that's true. For anything like this, isometric pad grids, I think they're the way to go for anybody who can't really play. And even if you can, I'd still say they're the way to go, because you can have inversions and stuff which are pretty complicated, really simplified by using the pads. Anyway, that's not what this is about. As I said, getting things in. So set up your MIDI channels as I have now. I'll quickly show you a couple of things, and I'll show you this first thing, what I would do. Second thing, what I would do. First thing, what I would do is assign the MIDI ins to MIDI outs. As simple as this. You go to your MIDI output and give it a number up to 16, 1 to 16, because that's what MIDI 1.0 has. You have 16 channels. This has just got the one. If you want MPC, they have 2, so you can technically have 32 channels. But anyway, set up that. Say up to a number on your device, match that number to that. So you'd set that output and set the input on your device to be the same number. That means whatever you're pressing on here is going to match to that unit or that MIDI channel. Second thing is the outputs, because I'm sending from here. So this is kind of one where sometimes people get confused. What you're seeing there is the output that it's sending to that device. So if you're sending from the USB, it'll show up there. If you're on the hardware, and i.e. if you're using the outputs, you would use remote, or if you're using it connected to a computer, which is Ace, I think, you would use the Force. So where it says the Force, and that's the Akai MIDI. The Akai MIDI network is brilliant because you don't have to be next to that machine to use the MIDI, which again is a fantastic use of using things from like VSTs or anything from in the computer, vice versa, I suppose. The next thing I would do if I'm using drum machines, if you're not using drum machines, this doesn't really matter that much, but if you're using drum machines, what I would suggest is creating a dummy drum track. And the reason for that being is, let's say I've got this here, it's just melodics. So wherever the sounds are is wherever they are. And an easy way to get a bit more cohesive control over that is to set up a drum track and then send from the drum track using send to here to the actual MIDI output, what you're doing it to. So this is my drum machine, but now I've got the control over this. So I kind of know where this is. In an example, let's say this layout is some kind of unique, exotic layout on my drum machine. Then all I'd have to do is set up my drum track, and then I just go to the pad what it is. I would use pad color. So let's say it's here somewhere. Then I just go like that, right? And I know that that's whatever it is. Like, so suppose that's a kick or whatever. And it just saves a load of bother. Let me go back to here. The advantage of this and having it like this is you can use a step sequence now, and you can use a step sequence in a way that can kind of make sense. So let me do that really quickly. I've got the step sequence, got my kick, all right, and then I'm going to just make this a quick 2-bar thing. So I'll go like that. In fact, let me make the velocities all the same so that I know these are the velocities I want. So I've got that. Then, I don't know, I'll change that velocity for the snare. So I've got my snares there. And then, I don't know, my hi-hats I'm going to just vary. So that's the blue button. And then I'll just go here with this. And then I've got my groove. So that is easier than if I was trying to program it using this. As you can see, getting that sound again. So that's the advantage of setting up a dummy track. So now the next thing is getting the sound in. So I'm going to do this in real time, see how fast I can do this. I'm going to try and make a tune up. Yeah, okay. Let's see what we come up with. Yeah, that'll do. I don't know. I'm going to think too long about this. Okay, I'm going to use a little trick that I have by sending. So I'm going to send a note tracker. Send that to a note tracker. This to MIDI. So I know what it is. Bass. About this is I can just copy that to this the one I want. Play. that because I like that when it's single. Okay, so there you go. So I've got all of my sounds there. They're playing. Reason why you can hear it is because I've connected that device, my keys, directly into the Force. If I had a sound card, I could have those on separate channels. You don't have to do that because we're going to go to the next thing, what I want to show you, and that's how would you get them sounds in. Okay, there's a couple of ways you can get the sounds in. Number one is you can play the sounds in on the clip track and on an audio track. So here I'll put on my audio track. I've got my stuff playing here. I could add this in. So I've recorded that in. I could mute stuff. So I've got that. That'll cut off. So these are in real time. So none of this stuff is playing. It's just this channel what's playing because the sound is coming out of another device, and this is just MIDI information. So that's one way I could record it. Another way, which I think is really cool, is this. So I'll get rid of that stuff. As I like to clean as I go, I'm going to go project and I'm going to just purge. So I'll purge unused samples. And that's nice because I like that. So the other thing that you can do is this. You can go to Looper. You set up Looper in a way. So I've set this up so it's going to record and then just play back on the thing. Then I could just decide what the things I want to record. So in this case, I'm just going to do the drums. So there's one thing I forgot to do. I need to change that back. Actually, no, I don't. I don't really. I could have this on auto, so it's fine because it doesn't matter. The signal's coming in. So here now, these are my MIDI information. This is my MIDI information here. Oh, what's that? Oh, interesting. All right. Let me go back to this. Let me change this back to in so that it won't get switched off. Oh. Okay, that's no. So if I want now, I can prepare this audio. I can prepare this audio for use with inside this system. So for example, let's say I'm just going to record this drum. I've set it for 2 bars. I can do this for 16 bars. This is how I like to work because then I've got more control of it. I'm doing it for 2, but you could have up to 16. At the moment, you could have up to 16 bars. So you could actually modify and control things over 16 bars of a looper. So now I've got my drum set up. I just press play. And that's recorded. So that information is now recorded. I could actually just normally export to a track and then just choose this track, and that's the same as me recording in, except that instead of me doing it in real time, I could just record all the pieces in bit by bit, I suppose. The other alternative is I could arrange all of my MIDI. So I've got all my MIDI information, and then I could just use a sequencer. So I could run the sequencer and then record all the pieces in bit by bit. That's not really why I would do it. So the main way I think, which is really good to do it, is by creating clip tracks. So I've got my drum there, which is there. When you play it, you can hear it's there. Then if I press Shift and I press Export to Pad, this is going to bring up an area where I can give those audio clips to a drum track. So I've created a drum track previously, and it's called Clip Kit, and it's there. Let me go to this dummy track. That'll do. So this is going to tell. This tells me that this audio, what I've now sampled, is going to go to this track here, clip track. I'm using a dummy track. Hopefully this isn't confusing. I'm using a dummy track at the moment because it's down here and the clip track's somewhere up there and it hasn't got colours on it because I didn't assign any colours to it at the time. So it's just going to follow the track, which is blue. But I'm going to put this on this one. I can put it on any, but I'm going to put it on there. So now that sample, which I'm going to name, and I'll call it Beats. I press keep, and I can clear that now, because if I go to clip track and let's go launch, and I'll go across. In fact, do you know what? Let's go here, and I'll just move to clip track. Clip kit. If I go to clip kit, what I'm on now, this is here. And the advantage of this now is I could set up this and I could set up a bass line. So I'll try and extend this further just to show a bit more. I'll go back to looper. I'm doing this really quite slow. If I do it really fast, that's not going to help you. So I'm trying to show you in this kind of slow, methodical way, and then you can decide how you would want to use this. So again, I'm going to say, let me do bass line. So I'm going to record this bass line. So I'll just press record and then I'll press play. And now I'm going to record that bass line. Blam. And I could do all this without stopping, but it makes no sense not to. So press shift, export pad. There we go. So I'm going to have that and I'm going to call that bass. So bass. So to reiterate, I'll keep that. So what I'm going to do is clear that. So if I go, and I'll show you again, if I go to my clip kit, I now have drums and bass. So there's so much more I can do with that now. And because this now has tempo changes, I could actually, if I was clever about it, I could actually program a tempo change and then just have that as a row. What I could even do is do layers. There's so much more. So this is how I would use it. If I wanted to, if I was tweaking it, which I'll show now. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. And I'll open that up. I'll do that over 4 bars. Because it's the same thing, but over 4 bars. And I'm going to tweak that. So I'm going to go to my device here. So like this, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm doing all my tweaking shenanigans here again, just to show. I've got my clip kit, and now I've got, but I've got that tweaked. So play all 3 of these. So basically, that's how you can get the stuff in. That's the way I would do it. Okay, I just wanted to show this again because you can't see the full screen. Here are all of the different channels that I have MIDI information on. As I've shown, as I said, playing from the pads is probably the best way to do it. Here is the clip drum track that I made. So when I was showing that information, when I was explaining information, it was to create this. And obviously, if I go into here, they're all named, so beats, and using select, I can see bass, and then do you know what? I realized I didn't name that. I didn't really name that. So I could go here. This is a thing about this. I could just rename that. So chords, synth chords. The other thing, if you wanted to as well, is you could stream this information. So there's loads of different ways of approaching MIDI on the Force. I mean, even now, just because this is a drum kit, what I could do is I could go in here and I could just do these as layers. So I could just have the one layers. What I could even go is further and then actually set up the mute play. So when I press this, it mutes something else. This is pretty good for when you're using something live, depending on how you work, obviously. It's all depending on how you want to work. I just like the freedom of how you can work, because you can decide how you want things to work. And I kind of like that. So yeah, so we've got that. And like I say, I'm going to get back to why dummy tracks are also useful. As I was stating, basically I create a dummy track and then I use the dummy track to send to the MIDI, and that will play whatever's on the MIDI. So at the moment I've got a drum kit on here, but also what you can use this for is sending MIDI internally. How this becomes handy is, say I've got this here and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but you know what? I wouldn't mind checking some other kits, internal kits. So what I can do is I can go load, new track, go down, load new track, load new track, load new track. And I could do this 120, well, not now, but basically you can have 128 tracks. There's no, I wouldn't even begin to do that, but you could. I'm just going to do a few. I don't know how many this is. I don't know. Is that enough? I don't know. One more. And one more. Why not? Right. So I've got all of these tracks now, and I'm playing this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is cool. Let me go back to the dummy track. So I'll go back down to 2. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not quite sure on this. I can go to another track. So let me move to another track right up here. So I can now, let me start again, because that one obviously was MIDI overflow. And I say, yeah, maybe that one. And this is quite handy if you're coming from USB MPC2. This is similar MPC2 workflow, but you have way more advantage now because it's contained in one track. So for example, let me go a few bit more because I loaded them, but I like that one. So remember that's 14. So remember it's 14. 14 I liked. 14. Oh, I quite like that as well. So 18 and 14. 18 and 14. That's pounding. 18 and 14. 18 and 14 are the ones that I liked. All right. Well, there's a couple of ways of doing this. If you remember, we're already on the Force, so I could just go. I don't even have to go to launch, really. I'll go to Matrix so that I can kind of see where I am. I don't remember, it was 14. So I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? Just to be on the safe side, because I knew that was 14 and 18 what I liked, because the numbers will change. So I'm going to go 14. I'm going to go this one, because I can rename them after, innit? So I'm going to go this one, and 18 was another one that I liked. 18. and this. So, because I like two. So I like this one and this. Right. So what I could do is I'll go back to the matrix and I use navigate because it's such a nice feature that nobody really uses, but it's ace. And then I'll get rid of what I didn't like. So I'll go get rid of that. That. I'm going to keep going. This one I liked, so I'm going to keep that one. And I'm going to go here, here, and this, right? And I'll get rid of that. So I've got the two kits that I did like, and then I've got that, and then I could move them down or whatever. So go back to this. Let me go back. The dummy kit. Go here. Go into there. And also, don't forget you can do it from the mixer as well. So it's just that now we've got this, and it's such a nice feature. I can just say, all right, well, where was it that I wanted? I wanted this one. So it's got this one. And I could decide between each one of these. I kind of like that. And if I like that, all I have to do is copy and paste. So I could either copy from here into that one, or say I had a bunch and I wasn't quite sure. The drum pattern's here, so I can select there. I can go copy. Then I can just scroll across till I find the thing that I actually want it to be. And I think I said it on this, so I go there and I paste it there, and I've got it there. So I've got it on the actual thing. And then if whatever I'm wanting to do, if I'm wanting to add more, and that's another useful thing. So that's an example of how you can use a dummy track to do other sounds. The other thing as well with the dummy track is if you're using something internally, you've got all of the access to whatever works internally as well. So, for example, this is using a dummy track, but what I can do is if I press note and then note again, I've got access to everything else on that track. So it's sending that information. So, for example, so I could kind of set up clips based on that, and then I could go through them. So again, I'm not locked in. I'm not locked in because I can use the dummy track to assess other tracks. All right. So I think that's about the size of it for my MIDI beliefs. I'll just add this just in case. The reason why I didn't really get into anything like program changes or basically any other CC is because, again, that starts to become unique. Why? Because you need to look at the MIDI implementation charts for your device. Do they conflict? Because sometimes units have basically special features, and those CCs are occupied by that. And like I said, I think that's a skill to itself, so I don't really use it because I just want to get to doing the music, and I prefer to have fun on the one device. So that's why I was explaining these are my MIDI beliefs, and this is the best way of stuff getting inside there, because as soon as it gets in that side there, you're laughing. You've got 8 tracks of audio, but the 8 tracks of audio can have different audio regions of clips, but the best way, like I says, is to create clip tracks and then work from that. And if there's something specific, you can use auto sample to do that as well. So yeah, if you're using your own sounds, and yeah, I think that's about the side of it. So until next time, hope you're well, and I hope this has been helpful, and Peace.